Do. Hello, good morning if you're watching us on Pacific time. Good evening if you're watching us from the UK or from Europe. I'm Martin Cross. This is Cross's Corner, brought to you by Ludum, and got a fantastic special guest tonight. Mike Callahan, one of the world's finest coaches, chief coach of the University of Washington program, and has had sensational achievements, not just as University of Washington coach, but also as an under-23 coach, former World Championship oarsman and sculler. And I guess, there's lots of things you could say about you, how many times you've won Coach of the Year and how many times your crews have won the overall cup at the IRA championships. But that 5-year consecutive winning streak seems to stand out on all of your biographies, Michael.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. Appreciate that. Yeah, I think it took a few years out of my life to win those 5 in a row in our students' lives, but it was quite an accomplishment for our student athletes. And one thing I'm so proud of is how many guys rode in all those 8s. It wasn't like the same consecutive crew every year. One time I counted up, I think it might have been 40 different people rode in all those 8s, and
wow.
Just shows the depth and kind of buy into the team culture here and what we were doing. And it was a very special time. There's a lot of special people that came through, and something I'll hold dear to my heart for sure.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was talking to Conlon McCabe last week.
Oh yeah,
and I, it was about sort of 2/3 of the way through the interview, and we got talking about the Washington program, and I said, "What was the best crew you rode in?" And he said, "I can't tell you that."
Yeah, they always want to know that from me too, and I said, "Well, that's like picking between your children, which is your favorite child."
Yeah.
I can't reveal that, but they all had a different personality in some ways too, and they all kind of rode similar in some ways, but also rode differently in some ways too. So a lot of them were really special. He rode in one in 2013 that I think one of the most proud moments I had as a coach is rowing that Henley final. I know we lost it, but it's just that magical moment with the sunlight out there, and you're in the referee launch. And you're going down the course and you're seeing your guys go as fast as they can against one of the best crews in the world. And it definitely stood out to me as even though we lost the race, it was a prime moment for me for sure.
Yeah. Well, we can get into that as we go. But it was really interesting because, unbeknown to me, the guys at Molesey had looked on your Washington's announcement about the program, and they were really, really excited. It was like they were saying, wow, the IRAs might happen this year after all. So for those that haven't seen it, I know, most watching might have done. What was the announcement today? And how do you think the season's going to pan out, Mike?
Yeah, I'm very optimistic. Right now, we do have a racing season in place. For the University of Washington, we have an in-conference season. So we're going to race within our conference, which is the Pacific 12 Conference. And so we're going to race in Oregon State, Stanford, and the University or California, Berkeley. And we're going to do that on the traditional opening day Windermere Cup weekend, which we're excited about. Now, the festivities won't be the same. We're not going to have the log boom. We won't have the big parties. But the most important thing is we're going to be racing down the Montlake Cut against a very strong opponent, which we're really excited about. We're working very hard on the Pacific 12 Championship, which will be 2 weeks later. And we have 3 alternative race courses. We have them in 3 different states, just in case one state can't have it. We'll be ready to pivot to Oregon or Washington out of California. And then the IRA stewards will make the decision at the end of March 26th, I believe, if we're going on ahead with the IRA. And right now, I'm very optimistic from everything I've heard. I think the format will be different. We're going to probably row something like a time trial and maybe a heat and a final. It'll be a 2-day regatta versus a 3-day regatta. But I'm very optimistic for the schools who are rowing that will be able to have an IRA. Now, it hasn't been official yet, but I'm feeling very optimistic. And I know the organizers were working very hard. I know the administrators are working very hard to put off a regatta. Same with the NCAA for the women also. So we're very optimistic right now.
That is amazing. And when we were talking before we went live on air, I have to admit to be really surprised at how long you've actually been able to run a program this year.
Yeah, we started basically the first day of school at the end of September, and we've been running almost 50 student athletes on the men's side, and the women have run over 60 student athletes. Wow. And we've been pretty much COVID-free the whole time. We've had an incredible commitment by our student athletes to change their lifestyle. I mean, this is not a typical collegiate lifestyle, U.S. colleges, they're fun. And they've stayed in their dorms, they've stayed in their houses, they've, only dealt with a very small social circle. And our student athletes have done an amazing job. We've had no interruption for COVID. We've been, rowing singles for most of the fall. We then pivoted to pairs and fours within households. And then recently we've been moving out of pairs and fours within households and then intermixing the team. And we've been hitting eights. This morning we had a pair race and we'll row eights tonight and we'll be racing tomorrow in eights. And, we're very cautious. Contact tracing is very important. The guys have to make really diligent decisions, but so far it's been, and that the other thing is the quality of training has been really high. Yaz and I have both agreed that things through COVID, we might change, like rowing the singles as long as we have. We were running 26 singles on the men's side a day, like at a single practice, and we had a lot of gains from that. So I think that's gonna be part of the program moving forward.
Wow, that's amazing. One thing I can't understand, or I'd like to, sorry, I'll rephrase that. One thing I'd like to understand is how come it's worked for you and it's been different for some of the Ivy League schools like Yale who haven't run a program?
Yeah, well, we're all in different conferences. Well, one thing is in the United States, we have 50 states in this union. So right there's a delineation right away from the federal government to the state, and then within the state, there are different counties. And then within that, on that layer, there's also different conferences, the Ivy League, which Yale's in the Pac-12, which California, Stanford, and us are in. And we all have different rules and different guidelines on health protocols. So in the Pac-12, we were fortunate to bring back fifth-year seniors. Many of my guys last year, after not having a season, applied to graduate school and got in and got another year, and they're here now. And so on the Ivy League side, they might not have had that opportunity. And also those schools in that league decided not to bring, maybe those schools decided only to bring two classes back, first-year students and fourth-year students, or second-year students and fourth-year students. Here, we were allowed, there's no one on campus besides maybe labs, maybe, ROT, military leadership, and then also the athletes. Everyone else is remote, essentially. And so we have 600 student athletes here, and we're operating in this, we call it the footprint. It's not really a bubble, but we're operating this footprint that has a lot of safeguards in it. So I hope that explains the differences. While some schools are, fully operating, some are only rowing pairs, some are rowing singles, some people are just arriving now, and we've been going the whole time. We're very fortunate. Wow.
And what's the morale been like in the squad over that time?
Well, overall, I think, we have a lot of joy. I think one thing that we stress to our student athletes is this is a very challenging thing. And the fact that we get to go through this challenge together as a team, if I'm a leader teaching future leaders, we want to make sure that they understand how to take on challenges. And we hope that people face them first in the next generations. And so our morale has been a lot of joy and gratitude. It's not what you can't do. Let's focus on what we can, like the old adage. And that has brought a lot of joy. And also really in the mentality is like, be present. This whole season could be taken away from us again. We could have some sickness on our team. So make sure you're enjoying the process of getting better every day, athletically or in school. We're making progress toward our degrees or as a person. So we just are continuing to preach that to our student athletes. Now, nationally, when I talk to my colleagues at other schools, they're not able to coach. And I think their student athletes that are home, or maybe some are coming back, and that's a tough situation. That's why I think we are stretching to our students that we're very fortunate, be very grateful, and make the most of the moment that you have that's been afforded to you by a lot of hard work from other people. So
wow. And is it unusual to have the men's and the women's program both running together? I guess you've been even more close because there's only so many athletes in the college.
Yeah, I think our whole university athletic department has gotten closer. The head coaches are closer than ever. There's more collaboration. We have almost weekly calls. We actually have tutorials with each other now. So we're actually hearing more from our basketball coaches and our football coaches and golf coaches, what have you. It's actually brought the community tighter, and because we have to collaborate so much on COVID protocol, but also just mentality. How do you get to a student athlete that's hard to reach? How do you catch a student above the line and show them that they're doing the right thing? It's actually been. There's a lot of things that have been gained from COVID that I'm more focused on, even our recruiting through Zoom and all these other platforms. And now I'm like, well, let's keep some of that because that's working. Same for the single, we're like, let's keep that process going because that worked. So it's afforded us some opportunities. And so that's what we keep looking for, the solutions, the opportunities, not what we can't do, and just keep, enforcing that mentality amongst our students. And I think it's worked.
So how was recruiting work for you this year? Because so many potential athletes haven't been able to row.
Yeah,
So,
a lot of it's been personalities, trying to get on and getting to know people. I feel like I've had more conversations with students and their parents than in the years past. And of course, we'd want students to come on campus to see it. Usually people are always blown away by the campus here, and it's not what they expect. So in some ways we had to do virtual tours. I mean, the women put a really strong virtual tour together, and it's been sensational. We've done stuff like on our Zoom calls with parents, and I feel like we've gotten to know people better. But we chugged along. We have, I think, a strong class coming in next year. Hopefully more to add as things go forward. But also, we might have some student athletes return from our team that have another year of eligibility because of COVID. They've been granted another year of eligibility, so we'll manage our roster that way too.
Oh, that's amazing. And you're hoping to get Simon van Dork back next year as well?
I hope so. I hope Simon's on right now. But yeah, absolutely. He's doing a fantastic job with the Dutch team. And we have a few others, Brahms there doing really well. And Michael Mantel just joined them after he graduated a year and a half ago. So yeah, we're hoping to get Simon back and hopefully get some of his wisdom and some of his leadership back here on campus. I know a lot of our recruits would love to row with, guys coming in would love to row with him and, feed off of that energy. But yeah, it's been awesome to see him do so well at the World Championship, qualify for the Olympics. It's also been interesting to watch the mentality of all those Olympians having to tack on another year. And I know that's tough. That's a tough road for sure.
Yeah, what have you made of that? Because have you got some of your athletes in the US squad or at forward Huskies in the US squad at the moment?
Yeah, we have a few stretched around the world. We have we have some guys in the US like Chris Carlson's trying out, Ben Davidson. Of course, we've had others jumping in there too and trying out and being in part of that mix. We also have some people in Australia. Stuart Sims trying to Cox in Australia. We have some British guys too. Jacob Dawson hopefully is doing well in that.
Yeah.
So we have people kind of spread out around the world in different places, but that's been a tough road a little bit to jump, another year. So it's good to see them still motivated.
Yeah. One of the things while we're talking about Simon, I mean, what was it like to see him do that sub 540 on the erg?
Well, I did 2 in 2 weeks, so we got
kind of.
Yeah, we do this 4x2K workout the week before to kind of break the mentality, like how hard it's going to be, one's going to be, and he went 5:39.4, on just, I was like, the conservative one, and then the next week he's like, okay, I'm going to go for the record, and until I believe 125 meters to go, he had the record, and I mean when you're seeing like 123s the whole way, and you stayed to 123.5. You're kind of like, I mean, he was so close, and I'm sure he could do it, but when it's appropriate.
Yeah. So how much rest do you get in between those 4x2K?
We usually give them 20 minutes. It's pretty substantial.
And they do it 4 times?
Yeah, I mean, and some of these guys average like 6:04. 4 of them are better. I think Simon averages better. I could look it up, but yeah, some of these guys crush it. And
what was the genesis of a session like that? Because I'm thinking maybe I don't even think I would have done 4 2Ks as an oarsman. I'm thinking that is a really interesting, psychologically and physiological session.
Yeah, this one, I'll bring this one back. You'll love this one. This one comes from Fred Holmbein, who was a freshman coach here, and I saw him do it in 2001, and I think he named it IRA in a day. And so it's been a tradition here. I think other schools do it too. I think they do it. Everyone does it in a different way. But the first person I know who has done it was Fred Holmbein. And, of course, Fred rode for Mike Spracklin. So anyone who's rode for Mike Spracklin done some tough sessions. And I would suspect that Mike Spracklin had put him and his teammates through something similar in their preparation to the Olympics. So I'm guessing here, but if Fred was on, we could ask him.
Yeah. I'm guessing you use Concept 2 static ergs mostly at Washington.
Well, we do a big mix actually. On that particular workout, we use the C2 static. But from the genesis, the beginning of the RP3, I'll tell you what. When I became a freshman coach here, we were very strong, and we rode pairs, but I don't think we really connected the water very well. We didn't row pairs. We rode pairs fairly heavily. And so we were looking for a way of teaching the guys to be a little lighter on the footboard and have a little bit better technique. So I had rode on something called an RP3 like once or twice, and these are the old black ones from the 80s, you know.
Yeah.
And they had the software with a force curve on it. And a friend of mine, Carlos Denaris, and we started collecting a couple of these, and we started putting guys on them, start testing guys on them. So in 2005-06, we started rowing the RP3 a lot, and then we started trying to collect them, and then all of a sudden RP3, I guess that was row perfect at the time, and then RP3 is now. And so through that genesis, we have 40 some RP3s here, and so we spend actually most of our ergometer time. We only rode the C2 usually once a week, and we rode the RP3 2 or 3 times a week, and then we use it as we combine them to do pairs or 4s or 8s. And we do most of our technical sessions and our long distance sessions on an RP3. And that has been a very strong tool for our program over the years. And we've experimented with a lot of different ways, but we still see that as one of our strongest. I liken it to flight simulators.
Yeah.
If you're a better flight simulator, you might be a better pilot, and you don't have the expense of running an airplane. So it's kind of like you get to go on the water on an RP3. You're indoors, it's quieter. You don't have the boat tipping around. You can talk and stop. And it was a really strong tool for us to teach students and also to make gains. So we rode them quite a bit.
It's really interesting what you're saying about, how to be more subtle with the boat and how to catch it more at the right time at the catch. But one of the impressions I've had about, say, American crews is they're very direct in at the catch, or they have been very direct. And now I think the American crews I see, and you're 8-2 you're under 23-8 in 2019, much more subtle about what they're doing at the front end.
Yeah, I think there's also some influence from Europe and other countries too now. I mean, there's a lot of really strong, skilled rowers coming from other places who have been taught to row that way in small boats, or we have a lot of scullers on our team. So you see people more conscious about that. Saying that our water is rough sometimes, and sometimes, the boat's bouncing around. So that was another way of trying to figure out, if you don't have flat water every day, how are you going to teach this? And that's why the single was really important to us also. It's really brought some touch, and there's, no one else to blame. You have to figure out how to, and so the skill level is rising, which I think is a great thing. But you're right. Yeah, I think Americans are pretty heavy on the front. So, maybe my crews do, but. So
talk to me about your technical influences, Mike. Where did you draw them from? And I guess the thing we can get into is what's changed over 17 years. Because I guess there must have been some, but first of all, what about your technical influences?
Yeah, as a coach, or like the whole history of my rowing career. I mean, as a coach, I would say, of course, coming out of the Mike Tatey camp with Chris Korzanowski, I had a lot of influence there. Prior to that, Bob Ernst was a coach of mine. I was really fortunate to row for him.
Yeah.
I also had a really strong under 23 or junior national team coach, Todd Jesdale. And
you were a world champion as a junior, weren't you?
Yeah, 1992.
Which is fantastic.
He was a strong influence technically for me. And then prior to that, I had Charlie Butt. And so that's not Charlie Butt, the Harvard coach, it's his dad. And so that's kind of my coaching lineage of who coached me. Saying that, when I came to Washington, of course, I think we're looking at Brian Volpenheim, just won the Olympic 8, and we're kind of using that as a model. And I wasn't able, in the end, I'd say it's like, trying to teach Kobe, and like you're trying to teach some kids to play basketball like Kobe Bryant. It's difficult. I mean, he's very skilled, strong, and committed, and he had quite a good touch. And so I wasn't able to teach my crews to row that way. And then I had one of my influences was a guy, Luke McGee, came here from Brent.
Yeah.
Luke. And I think he has a lot of influence from Sean Bowden and maybe, Paul Cook and some others. And when he came here, we recruited a couple student athletes from Germany, Mathis Jessen and Tom Lehman. And I feel like that, to me, that was the change of way I looked at rowing. I almost couldn't teach people to row this Rosenberg legs, late body swing and arms. The timing never got right. We didn't overlap well. I don't know if I didn't have the skill level here. I didn't know how to coach it as well as I had hoped. But when we started overlapping angles and rowing more similar to Germans and rowing more of that similar rhythm, we started making strong strides in our technical ability. So in some ways, a couple student athletes came here and were a strong influence, and they were coached by Rita and some other really strong coaches in Germany too. So since then, as student athletes come through, sometimes we had a lot of Canadians, sometimes we had a lot of Dutch guys, and always that that style comes into our program. But if you had to ask me, I look at Jurgen's crews, I look at the German crews, and for eights, and also we're not rowing singles, we're not rowing pairs really. So it's like, how are we going to make an eight go really fast at a collegiate level? I also found it a way to, I feel like there's less risk in it for us. We can try to hit home runs in baseball, but we're trying to hit singles and doubles. We're trying to make sure we have really fit guys, really determined guys, and it fits our race plan. So we might not have as much peak speed sometimes, but I feel like we have good base speed across the whole 2K course. So that's kind of a genesis of where I've come to where I am now. And of course we have influences here and there, but that's what I'm looking for right now.
So what do you make of the whole, there's been a movement over the last, 3 or 4 years, maybe led by the Australians in the paddling to pause at the back end. And I guess you've maybe seen that on World Championship stage or with the under 23s. What do you make of developments like that?
I love the style changes. You probably alluded to it earlier. We have students from around the world, from the United States and all these different countries. And last year when COVID shut down, I'll tell you a side story. We decided to have someone from someone who had rowed for me, who's on a current national team or Olympic team, come and talk to our student athletes about the style of rowing. Like, is it technique or style? And so we wanted them to come in and talk about the technique they row, the style, the rhythm. And inevitably, everyone would talk about style and technique. We had a Stuart Sim from the Australians talk about that. And then inevitably, everything came back to mentality. Within 10 minutes, everyone then just shifted into like, what's the mentality? Which I thought was really interesting. And that's anything from a guy who'd been at Dortmund to a guy who had been in the US system to a guy in like Colin McCabe came on, Caitlin Snyder came on, so it didn't really matter. Everyone was like, yeah, pick a style, do it well, do it together, and you'll go fast. And so that was the bottom line. But saying that, in the paddling, I feel like we could copy that, but we wouldn't do it well, I bet. So back to the way we're rowing, I think we're rowing a little bit. We did put some pausing at the finish at one point to try to gather people. But to me, it's like finding where the gathering point is. Is it at the body? Is it over the knees? Is it over the toes? The Canadians are doing over the toes. We're kind of doing more over the knees, hopefully. And then Australians are maybe near the body. So we define where we want that gathering point to be and where we want the impulse to be. And those are two main points of the stroke that maybe we should focus on. So a lot of guys try to mimic it, but it's something they also still don't know the subtleties, or they have the skill level to pick up the front like that straightforward from Australia does. So yeah. So that under 23 8 that you had that won the gold medal in, was it 2019? 2018 or 2018, and then some of them returned for 2019.
Yeah. So
I have a visitor. Sorry.
Hello there.
My daughter Maya. Sorry.
Hello, Maya.
Thank you. Hey, can you give me a minute? Thanks, honey.
Oh, what
we're homeschooling a little bit here.
Yeah. All the parents over here are absolutely going crazy today because it's the last day of homeschool before schools return.
Oh, I see. Yeah, we're just starting. They have Fridays off, but we're just back to school as of March 1st. So we have Monday.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Dad, what are you going to teach me?
She's got her priorities right.
Yeah. This is the reality of rowing coaching from home, So.
Yeah. So,
1 second. Thank you.
That's
yeah, we've been doing that for about a year now. It's been fun, but we're that's the reality I think of everyone, right? Everyone being at home so much.
Does she scull?
Not yet. Her mom was a rower. Her mom rowed at Yale, and her grandfather was a Grand Challenge Cup winner in 1977.
Oh wow, that's so cool. Yeah.
Here you go, Mom.
She wants a milkshake. Do you want a burger?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mike. It's lovely to see such a bouncy and lovely daughter.
Oh, I've got some energy. We're hoping they find an aerobic sport because they're gonna do really well.
Yeah. So to summarize about your technique, you have a lot of different influences coming into Washington. You have a couple of points in the stroke where you like people to row together, and you try and sink in athletes. I think Conlon McCabe was saying something interesting. He kind of seemed to me, he was saying, one outing you told him, if you want to row like a Canadian, you row like a Canadian, and that might just work in the middle of the 8 for us.
Yeah, maybe. I think he had to modify a little bit for sure. I think the rhythm was slightly different, but he did. That's a lot of times I challenge our guys with that. It's like, hey, if you're a really good oarsman, it's like being a good musician. You can play rock and roll, you can play blues, you can play jazz. Like, and the fact that you're able to play a few different styles or row a couple different styles just makes you an oarsman. So be flexible, be open-minded. You might learn something there that you might want to bring back or might work for you, or you think you're doing something in some way and it stretches you a little bit, and that stretch will allow you to grow more. So,
yeah. So what about the program you put together? I mean, how's that developed over the years? And what are the principles you use to put a program together these days?
Yeah, I think one is hard work for sure. I think this is a place of work. Number 2 is that we try to make it a meritocracy as much as we can. I think everyone says that, but we really try to run as much merit as we possibly can. And so, like, for example, the Head of Charles will have a pair race the Thursday before. If you're top 4 pairs, you're going and you're picking your own pair.
Really?
Yeah. And, right now, like today's racing, usually we'd have a system of pair matrices through the winter. And if you're in the top 5 pairs, you're placed with one of the top 5 other oarsmen on the other side. And then we have something called a pairs 4s 8s regatta. So the pairs run a regatta where the top 2 pairs become the top straight 4, and the next 2 pairs are the next straight 4. And then if those 2 straight 4s win, they become an 8. And that's the basis of the start of the 8 we started with at the beginning of the year.
Is it?
Yeah. And so you might need another power guy. You might need a stroke. You might need someone that binds people together. Harvey K might have to come in and help, do the mortar between the bricks and, pull together. But generally it picks 6 to 8 guys for us. And then the 2 other ones, it's a coach's choice. Or it's like, feeling out of what the boat might need. And
where does ergometer scores come in terms of influence for that? It doesn't sound like it's a total influence. What you can
I think students are really focused on it because you can measure it and it's really right in their face. But really, to make our boats, you really have to row the pair really well. Last year, we also tried to do a singles to 4s to 8s regatta. And that gave us a different result a little bit, which we thought was interesting. It was basically got 2 equal 8s out of it because there's some guys that sweep a little better than they scull, and we had some really strong scullers. So yeah, the ergometer scores, that's an interesting thing to me is we row in the C2 generally once a week. We get really strong scores. We do most of it on the water. We're able to row all winter here. We don't freeze over.
Yeah.
So most of the fitness is coming from the water, and most of the selection is coming from the water. It's mostly coming from a small boat first. And that's how the basis. And that's also the meritocracy. I think that's one of the reasons why we're able to win 5 in a row is that you win the race, and then I'm thinking, okay, well, now you have to make the boat again. And so what it does, I tell people, is it gives you the opportunity. You win the pair, it gives you an opportunity to sit in this 8. Now you have the opportunity to make the 8 go fast. And if you can't make the 8 go fast, another guy might get the opportunity. So it's about capitalizing on the opportunities you earn. And I felt like that was very motivating as a student myself. Like what I didn't like is when you didn't know what was going on. And I'm sure it happens in my program sometimes too. But when the control was in the student or the rowers aspect, they're very motivated. And I know we all like the word transparency, but if we can make it as transparent as we possibly can, that helps motivation for a long time. And they also know, like some younger guy sees that, like, yeah, I just got to win the pair. So how do I win the pair? That's on me.
Yeah.
And I have to have a better erg because I just need a better engine. Okay, well, take care of that. And I need to run the front end better. Then okay, I'm going to spend some time in the single. And so it starts pointing out, like, what are the ways you climb the ladder here? And I think when you do that, you set up a system that's why you have continuous growth. And when you're just making favorites or you're making decisions on someone's past talent or their past results, people get demotivated, in my opinion. So that's one of the motivators. On the other hand, some of the people don't like that because you're always having to prove it. You're always having to earn it. And that's exhausting.
Yeah.
So I have to be careful on that sometimes. So this year, in the last year, we toned that down. We got it almost too competitive to a point. Now we've had to tone it down. Like they're competing in everything, like tying their shoes, running to the boathouse. I mean, it went too far. And so now I'm trying to figure out how to get a nice balance there.
How do you figure that out? What does that look like from your end?
Well, I think it looks like you realize the team cohesion, like everyone's there in the 8, but they're maybe there for themselves. And of course, everyone's there for themselves, but then how do you buy into the whole team and the collective? And when I saw some of our very talented 8s maybe lose to a Yale, I was like, well, there's more in there. And maybe like it's the magic, it's the spirit, it's, the thing between, I just reviewed that, after those losses, I also review myself. You have to have a hard look in the mirror, right? And so for myself and my student athletes, okay, what can I do better? Did I make that a good environment, a bad environment? I could, create a better environment for my students to achieve something. So that's the genesis of it. And I was thinking back to some other crews where it was competitive, but not too much. You want it to, I always tell guys, you want to compete so we raise each other up.
Yeah.
Down. And I think maybe we got into that, and maybe got too spirited. And so I just like a hard reflection on the way the environment I created. And so that's where it came from. And that's what we're trying to improve now.
Do you have much lactate testing threshold in terms of do you set levels for the guys to row at, and do they row with pulse meters and things like that?
Not too often. We tried a couple times, and what we found is there was a division of the team. Like some guys are here, it's not a professional team. Some guys are pointing fingers, especially if it's very competitive. You're like, oh, he's working harder than me, and I'm having to work harder than him. And then why is he doing that workout, and I'm doing this workout? So I found that it was better if I almost took a Spracklen thing. I took some of these things out, and everyone does a similar thing. Now, it might not be perfect for Simon and not be perfect for the other guy on the other end of the spectrum, but for the bulk, it's pretty good. We do lactate testing, not this year, but we usually do lactate testing, get an idea where they are on like 4 or 5 different parts of the year. Usually it just reinforces what we know already in general. But we're careful about all the heart rate monitors and individualing some of the workouts because of the team mentality. And I feel like I learned that lesson. And I think in a collegiate environment, maybe in a professional environment, it's better. But these are still 18 to 23-year-olds, and they're being very competitive, and they want to win. So I had to be careful about that.
Yeah. In America, the coach, I mean, I think coaches are big figures anywhere. And, you alluded to someone like Mike Spracklen and talked about Jurgen Grobler. Dick Tonks working over with your way on the Pacific Coast. The coach is a massive figure, but particularly in American collegiate sport, the coach seems to be this very, wise, all-powerful kind of guy. Is that what it's like for you?
A bit. I honestly less so all the time. I feel like the new generation of students, there's a lot more agency in students these days. Everyone has more of a voice. I think that's also something that in our coaching circles, that's one of the biggest changes in the last 10, 15 years is the agency of students and the voice they have and maybe the rights they have, which is maybe a good thing. I would say that I was modeling after some coaches I had in the beginning, and now I'm having to adapt as a coach to get to student athletes, deliver the right message, a message what they were going to hear, a message. And so I think that's in my coaching, that's somewhere I need to improve. But I think what you're alluding to, it's almost, there is a little bit of that, the brand of the coach. One time I heard that student athletes don't go to American basketball or football universities for the university, they go for the coach. Yeah. And so there is a bit of that. But I feel like there's less of it also. I think the relationship between student athlete and coach is changing in the United States, maybe in the UK also, in other parts of the world.
Yeah, well, I think it is. I mean, interestingly, Jurgen Grobler is not now working in the British national team. And, in part, I think that's because he's, the Tokyo Olympiad ended. But I think also in part it was because the new performance director, for whatever reason, is looking for a different style of coaching. And that seems to be one reason why there's been this massive change in the British system.
Absolutely. I think managers in all sorts of sectors are figuring this out with young people coming up now. It's a different generation, and we need to adapt to meet them, halfway and find out ways to, create a great product, whatever that is. If it's medicine or a widget or a rowing stroke, it's people are changing, and maybe it's because of the internet and these other platforms that are out there, but it is what it is, and we have to always evolve. I stay stagnant too. We're not going to get any better here also. So it starts with me.
One of the things I was asked to ask you, Michael, is, in terms of if you have a session that's, one that, like Sprackley would have these really fearsome, legendary hard sessions that he'd put in. What do you have like that? That's, we've got this session coming up this week, guys, and this is, a real tough one. What do you have in your program like that?
Every Wednesday, every Saturday, most Wednesdays, most Fridays, and most Mondays. I tell people also in collegiate rowing, it's, we have a lot of really strong athletes, like a Simon Dork. He's coming from an incredible coaching and program of development in the Netherlands. And when you come here, it's a collegiate program. It's 9 months. It's really 8 months because there's a month off in the middle. And we have to go to like U23 speeds, if not higher, to win this championship from guys all over the world. And we only get to train 20 hours a week for most of the weeks. And some of those weeks we only get to train 8 hours a week. And so the product, there's some, not shortcuts, but there's some tricks you come along the way. And one of the people I modeled some of what we were doing off is Mike Sprackley. And because I looked at him as like, there's the theory of how things work, and there's also what actually works. And we started experimenting with some of the things that worked, and he was close by. Our teams would go up there, we'd compete against them, and I pick up a thing or two. I'm like, oh, I haven't seen that before, but it works. So maybe we'll try that here, or we'll modify it for an under 23 level guy. Not as many, intervals or whatever. But it started working also. So I don't know. I think that saying that. Our program, there's a lot of hard strokes. This year we backed it off a lot. I think we were in the middle a lot of the training, the training zones, and now we've polarized it more this year. There's more high end and kind of bottom end. And I think the guys, they also like that because it's a change. But it's not like sweet spot training, but we're in the middle zones a lot, and that's grueling. It hurts, and so that kind of can wear guys out. But I don't know, I've had a lot of results from it too. So it's kind of like, okay, do you want to come off that training or do you want to continue? So.
Yeah. We got a couple of questions which we could maybe fit in as we go. Thanks for watching, guys, and sending their question. DB Cooper, when's Washington going to challenge Brooks at Henley again?
That'd be great. Yeah, I got the survey from the Henley Royal Regatta this year, and they were like, hey, do you want to come from the early August, mid August? And I was like, I would love to come to all those. I got to get my administrators say yes too. We would love as a program to come to Henley. We actually own an 8 that's at the Henley, at a regatta, at a boathouse there. We'd love to come a lot. And it comes down to our student athletes. In the last generation of student athletes we had, they wanted to do under 23 rowing or national team rowing. And I feel like it's a wave. The kids want to do, Henley Royal Regatta, and then the next wave of guys wants to do under 23s or national team rowing, and then the next group wants to do Henley, and it kind of just goes back and forth. Yeah. We're in the transition. The guys have done a lot of under 23 rowing, and so now some new guys want to come back to Henley Royal Regatta, and I'm all for that. I love it, and I'd love to come as soon as we can. As soon as we have the student athletes to do it, and we're healthy to do it, and we can run it. So next couple of years would be. I'm all for it.
So just writing a fantasy Washington, Henley Royal Regatta crew, what event would you be hopeful of entering at the regatta?
I mean, I always want to row in the Grand. I think that's but I guess, usually what's available, I'd love to bring another ladies plate level crew, but usually it's available. If that level guy on our team is doing under 23s, and it looks more like a Temple Cup, right? But I would love to build another crew similar to 2013 where we could go to the go to the Grand and have a strong performance. I don't want to get there and lose by 15 seconds, but I would love to challenge someone at that level and race, neck and neck down the course. That's what I mean. As I said, my father-in-law won the Grand in 1977, and so I want to go in that event as much as we can. So.
What was special about that 2013 crew? Because, it's quite a remarkable series of races for you to do. And that race at Henley was great. What was special? What made it special?
Well, I think a lot of things. I think it was a culmination of many years of improving. We had most of the guys in the boat had been here for 3 or 4 years, and we're in the generations of we always were accelerating. We were always getting better, and then we dropped in a Colin McCabe, kind of like a turbocharger on top of a crew that was pretty established, and because he was coming back from the Olympics, so you had some wisdom there, and then you had he's pretty special, like physiological athlete and mental, strong athlete coming and veteran Olympic medalist coming into a college crew who was also that rode very well together and believed in each other, and just one of those crews that it had something special. So we could have done the ladies' plate, but I asked them to if they would be interested in going all the way and
Wow.
find what the limit was. And I think that's what the sport is. I mean, most of those guys had never lost a race. And so they lost their last race at Washington, so they can look at it that way. But I looked at it as you went against the world champions. I mean, and those guys, I mean, they have sirs in front of their names for a reason. Like that's really important that I thought it was really special, and like I said, being in that launch, watching that race was, fantastic for me.
Wow, that's amazing. Jamie Gare's got. We've kind of dealt with this a little bit, but maybe there's a couple of things in there which we didn't talk about Simon extensively. But he wants to know what he was like to coach and whether any ergs you gave him where you were shocked by the score.
Well, I think Simon is an incredible personality. I'd say he's humble, he's quiet, he's an amazing teammate, and like the guys around him all really love him. A guy like that could have a different personality, and he's very inclusive. He's a lovable man, and he's like a really good human being. That's one thing I think you should know about Simon. He's a really good person, foremost. The second thing is, have I been shocked by him? Almost not. I mean, in some ways, Bob Burns told me, he said, don't get overly impressed by your student athletes every once in a while. And I kind of take that sometimes. Like I also had guys like Conlon around too. We've had some other strong guys here. And so, yeah, I'm a bit, I have another business. But I think the 6Ks he's done, and are always really impressive. You see someone in the low 18-minute range. Wow. I guess shocked, maybe not shocked, but it's definitely, there's a lot of energy around it. He's definitely an impressive person and the other thing I think that people don't realize, he has a lot of touch. He's good in the single, and he doesn't disrupt the name a lot, and so. I think a lot of people think he's like an erg hammer. He's not. He's got a lot of touch, and he rows really well. And he rows really nimbly, and he can row fast for a big man. So he's got a great future ahead of him.
Yeah. Just one thing I get like it's Oxford and Cambridge, but talk to me a little bit about the Cal Washington rivalry. Coming a bit from the background of boys in the boat and that sort of thing. But what does it mean to you guys over there, and how significant is it for your season and such like?
Yeah, if we only had one race this season, I would want it to be the Cal Washington duel. And I think we have that scheduled, and that's what's really important. It starts with them. I think one thing that people have to realize is that you need rivalries. You need, Oxford, Cambridge. You need Harvard, Yale. You need, and I like to think we have Washington, California. I think we're all in the same breath. And I think it's really important to push each other's level up, and we need each other for the sport. We need each other to push each other's limits. And we've done that over the years. I mean, we've traded heartbreaking losses and wins. We've rode on national teams together, or maybe in Oxford boats together, Cambridge boats together later on. But it's an important rivalry in our sport. And I think we're really pushing each other. I think, in the late 1990s, when Gladstone was there at last, they really pushed Washington. We got a lot better. I think collectively as a program, deciding if we want to compete at that level, we need to raise our game, our ability. So back to that idea of competition, I like to think it is a very healthy one. Sometimes it can get probably pretty nasty over the years and some other passes, but I see it as one that's so necessary and so important in our sport that it's got to be cherished. saying that, like if you go back to the 40s, Kai Ebright's boats beating our boat to go to the 48 Olympics, in the Olympic trials back to, there's some 70s back and forth and 80s back and forth and 90s. I mean, it's really meaningful. And, under Scott, Scott is a young coach. He's really driven, incredible oarsman, if anyone followed his career. So they're in good leadership too. So it's, we take them very seriously up here for sure.
And you're friends with these guys. I mean, you're a friend. I'm assuming you're friends with Mike Tate and.
Yeah. I like to think so. I mean, we want to beat each other, but I like to think we're friends, and Mike was, also gave me the helm a couple of years to run the under-23 team, which was really important to me, and I think we worked really collaboratively to do that, and that's in an effort to make our national team a little bit better and supply better rowers up to the Olympic team, so can have a better result up there, which I think the United States rowing needs for sure. On the men's side, the women have been just dominating, in so many years. So I think it'd be nice to have the men come up to that level also and have a really good result here in Tokyo.
Got another question here from Martin Heineman. We've kind of talked a bit about the Windermere Cup, but he wants to know where it fits in your program and what its significance is, I guess.
Well, I think a lot of things like rowing, similar maybe to Henley, we need some spectacles. We need to get some eyeballs on our sport. We need to get people drawn into our sport. So that's what the Windermere Cup is. It's what it really is the opening day of boating season in Seattle and in the Pacific Northwest. And this is a very maritime community. So there's sailboats and boats, fishing boats from Alaska. There's boats everywhere here. It's a very water-oriented community. And so it's the opening day of summer boating season in the Pacific Northwest, which is a significant boat parade. So that's gone on for 100 years. Dick Erickson, a former coach here, wanted to put a rowing race on it because it was this huge festival. And it got eyeballs on rowing. It was a spectacle. And that's important, and so then Windermere came in because we weren't getting very good. Every once in a while I would have Cal row in it, but not too often. But we weren't getting very strong competition, and we were winning by a lot. So Windermere came in and said, hey, how about we get, at the time it was the Soviet Union. And so they got the Soviets to come. And so we, over the years, it's been anywhere from, France to Egypt to Argentina to Great Britain to Brooks. Next, hopefully it'll be under, the Dutch. So it means a lot to the sport. It puts a lot of eyeballs. This is a city this is a very young city also. And they've grown up with Husky crew, Husky football, Husky rowing. Yeah. And so it's everyone's grown up with Husky rowing around here. So people come and watch it. It's fun. And so it's a spectacle. We tried to put a night sprint in front of it. Like we realized that maybe short racing, just the length of Motley Cup will be a good spectacle. We got to keep young people coming into our sport and exposing them to what the sport can do for people. So, it's just a vehicle to get eyeballs and some, energy into rowing.
That's fantastic. Talking about the history there, and do you know anything more about the Boys in the Boat film, where they've got up to with that and how that's going? Yeah,
well, we know that the director was picked, and that was George Clooney. I think there's been a couple of different screenplays written. I think they've settled on the last one. I think George Clooney has been in talks with Daniel James Brown, the author, and I think he's going to share the screenplay with them soon. Remember, they make this book, which would be like 20 hours of a movie, into 2 hours and entertaining. Yeah. So they have to decide what the central figures are. Is that going to be George Pocock? Is that going to be Joe Rance? How do you make it? I mean, it's like Seabiscuit. It's a horse that runs around a circle and wins. We got to make that into a 2-hour movie that people are going to pay for, right? So how do you do that? It's got to be, something that grabs people's heartstrings, what have you. So George wanted to start, I believe, last summer, but with COVID, he wanted to have real crowds to film some of the crowd scenes. So he's waiting, and I think he really resonates with the story because he grew up in kind of rural and maybe not affluent Kentucky. And so he really, when he read the story, really bonded with it, from my understanding, and really wants to do it and do it right. Well, I hope they do it. We're excited. We hope they do some of it in Seattle. We're trying to collect old Pocock boats. We have all the old launches. We have the old hangar where they used to row out of. We're hoping they do a couple scenes around here, but I would suspect they do most of it somewhere else. But we're hoping to do some of it on our campus. And that's kind of where it stands. It's a little bit of a delay because of COVID, but we know they're excited about the project.
Yeah. And how cool is it to have that legacy of the boys in the boat? I mean, you've got the Husky Clipper up in your boathouse, I gather.
Yep.
Does that really mean something for you now? And how important is it for you guys?
Well, it's interesting. It used to always be important. We used to like shave our heads and realize, this and that about the boys in the boat when you're a student here. It was always kind of like the pinnacle, like this is what you wanted to be as a Husky oarsman before the book. Now, saying the book has been an incredible vehicle to tell there's so many people that finally understand rowing from reading that book. They're like, oh, I get it. Or a family member like, oh, now I understand why you row. But literally we have thousands of people coming to our shell house every year just to look at that boat. And we have our own tour now around that book. And you'd be surprised. How many people are, it's every day someone's knocking on the door to look at the boat. And I think what it's done is done an incredible job of telling what rowing's like and can be like. It's done an incredible job of what rowing can do for people coming together and as a collective to do something great. But I think it's been really important for our sport. It's given it. And so I think the book brought it up to one level, and I think the movie will bring it up to an entirely different level. Hopefully we'll do it like a Chariots of Fire, Prefontaine type of, energy that brings into rowing and eyeballs on our sport.
Yeah. Just taking a little zoom back now, and in terms of, you've been around the world rowing scene for quite a while now. Where do you see the sport of rowing, both, nationally in America and, the world stage? We've, had changes with the Olympic program, with lightweights disappearing or going to disappear. Maybe there's going to be coastal rowing, pressure from the International Olympic Committee. You sit back and where do you see the sport headed, or how healthy do you see the sport is?
I think first and foremost in the United States and in our community, we will need to diversify who's entering rowing and who goes all the way through from entry of rowing into club rowing, into collegiate rowing, into national team rowing. So I believe in first I'll just start about my universe, which is the collegiate system in the United States of America. I think it's going to be very important for us to bring diversity into our sport. I think that the time where it only looks one way, it might be of the past. And at least in the University of Washington will be a big effort to we have an incredible program here called the George Pocock Rowing Foundation. Yeah. And it brings erg rowing to every middle school in our area. And it's like 40 different schools. Now we need to get some of those students into boats, and then into being recruited to get into college. Because then once you get into education, you're changing people's lives, and it's a gateway into other things. That's what it has done for me and done for many others. So first and foremost, I think we need to diversify and find pathways for students to enter our sport, and then excited about it, and into collegiate rowing and into Olympic rowing. That's, I think, going to be very important in the United States and in the collegiate system. I think internationally, I'm not always as educated what's happening on the IOC level. You hear a lot of rumors, you hear a lot of conjecture, but I think that a lot of people are excited about shorter rowing. Something that happens, it evolves in front of you. Now, if there's an appetite for that, I think it'd be wonderful to have 500-meter sprints or something. It would change maybe the makeup of rowing. I think most of the training is very similar. It's very polarized, very high volume. It'd be also be interesting to see a different end of rowing where you're really sprinting, and maybe it's more biomechanically, a precedent from biomechanics over maybe just aerobic capacity. And so I'd love to see some shorter races on the Olympic program. I think it'd be exciting. I think coastal is interesting, especially around here. We have that kind of vibe. People race on the islands here. We had, the World Championships in Vancouver happened in Island a few years ago. So I think that's I think we have to expand what we think of rowing, the indoor rowing, also some virtual rowing. I think the companies that can, in this time, like the Zwift, if we can get more virtual rowing, I think that would be important. I think Jason Osborne has shown that that's captivated people, a sculler going to cycling. So it'd be kind of cool to go both ways. But I think, it's a market of short attention span and instant clicks, and you want to keep people's attention on the sport. And so I think we need to evolve a little bit. But for me, it would probably be diversity. I'd like to see a little bit shorter rowing here and there. Collegiately, I think it'd be cool to bring a little bit of sculling if we could, but that would be probably a long haul for us. One thing that collegiately also is we're outside the NCAA sometimes, in some ways, and we want to be adapted into the NCAA, but there's arguments on both sides, and both are valid, and we have to decide how to navigate that. What we're looking for is value for men's rowing that women's rowing already has here, on your campus.
Yeah.
So we need to figure out how to continue to bring value to our institutions. Good grades, good people, diversity, and some success for your, and some. So I think that's important for us.
Oh wow. I've just wondered there, in terms of talking about the Olympics, have you ever wondered about, coaching at the Olympics, or that you might do that one day? Is that something that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have the Olympic dream. I think as an athlete, I was fortunate enough to be a spare one time. And I think I lived the Olympic dream for a long time. I certainly would love to coach a crew at the Olympic level. I coached one senior pair when Luke and I. Yeah, and that was really fun. I feel like the relationship's a lot different. It's more you're an advisor. I think your skills of a coach, it's more not like, back to you were saying before, it's not like the all-knowing coach and the athlete below you. It's more flat. At the same level, advising, helping, I think that was that was really interesting to me. In the United States, it's probably hard to do both at the same time, but I would always welcome to, coach a pair, even the straightforward would be interesting. And 8 would be really fun in the United States, because kind of it's the important boat here. But I would welcome it, but it would be a change of lifestyle. It'd be a pretty big family decision too. But I would love to do a supportive role, for Mike Tatey in some ways going forward. There was a possibility, but I don't know if it's really come. I've had that opportunity yet, but if it comes, I definitely would consider it.
Yeah, there was one thing I was going to ask you, Mike, and I think I was watching a TV interview that you did about 5 years ago, ahead of the IRAs, and you talked about. The guy asked you a question. He said, "Oh, you've been having this boxer in to work with the guys, and what's he been doing?" And you said, "I'm not going to reveal his secrets. Maybe after the race."
Yeah.
And I thought it sounded so interesting. I know Sean Bowden has this kind of boxing analogy. He used like the rounds of the boat race, where you go round one to a certain distance, and if you get a win round one or round two. Yeah. So how was it with the boxing guy, and what did you draw from that?
Well, first of all, we usually try to find an influence from somewhere else. Multiple. This year, it's a women's volleyball player from the United States of America. Oh
wow!
And she's an two-time Olympic. She played volleyball here at the University of Washington, won the NCAA. Then she won multiple Olympic medals on the U.S. women's volleyball team. Now, saying that, back to boxing, I think we had lost to Caledonia a couple years in a row, and the analogy is you're going into a ring mano a mano with someone. What's your mentality? And I feel like that was the last piece. I feel like we had the capacity to win, but like, are you in the right mind space to go against? It's going to be you and another person in the ring. Across the lane line there. And so the boxing coach was like, "What's the mentality of getting in a ring? You're all by yourself." And so we kind of went through some, just how would you conceptualize that? How would you prepare yourself to go? In college, we do 3 rounds also. So it was 3 rounds. What's the 3 rounds? Yeah. And I think it helped. We've also used military analogies. We have some guys that are in special forces groups, and they've talked to guys here about their mentality. But that right now with this volleyball player, she's been outstanding, and had a lot of life lessons and things that are tangible for our student athletes to grab onto.
That must be so good to work as a coach in a program like that, to have different influences coming in, because you learn so much because you have to keep learning as a coach to keep fresh, don't you?
Absolutely.
To be right for your athletes.
Absolutely. I mean, it can get pretty stale. I mean, the rowing strokes are, it has its subtleties, but after a while, in the end, like I said, there's some subtleties of technique, but in the end, the mentality and your mindset towards life is going to be really important, and toward the rowing stroke, toward the race, what have you.
Yeah. We had another question here. I don't know how you could answer this, and I think we might have talked about it already.
Right.
It's quite a difficult question, I think, from David Allen. Unlimited training minutes with student athletes, which of course you haven't got because we've talked about that already. What would your general training philosophy be?
I would probably polarize it more, you know, get rid of some of the stuff in the middle, some of the AT. I'd probably do more UT2, UT3 work. I'd probably be able to work more time in the single and pair that way. And I think that would definitely help us technically for sure, especially for our guys who are crossing in from other sports or don't have as much time in boats. But I would probably polarize it. But you see that's the general trend. I think our strength training is really strong right now. But I think most of the fastest programs out there, you know, worldwide have shown that training philosophy works, you know, and so I'd probably get on that, I'd go that direction. So I'd get out of the middles more, and I'd probably push it to.
Yeah. How many strength or weight sessions do you do a week, Michael?
We really do 3. We do Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. The third one is really all about stability and core mobility. It's different. Yeah, so we do 3.
Yeah. Wow. We've been talking for an hour. I don't know where the time has gone. I kind of just want to ask you a couple of questions to round up. What do you think about the Olympics happening this year? Are you hopeful or uncertain? What's your take on it?
Well, last night, just funny you asked that. Last night I was reading an article, I think in one of the financial magazines about the cost of the Olympics. And man, for the students or for the athletes, I'm very hopeful that they will be able to compete. So first thing is hopeful. And the second thing is I think it'll be challenging, but I think you could do it. I think it's going to look different. Everyone has to accept that it's going to look different. The parameters are going to be different, maybe less fans, no fans. I think the vaccines could really help here, you know, and so I'm hopeful. The cost of it is incredible, and I don't know who foots the bill in the end for all that. That's a whole other thing. That was what I was reading about, but yeah, I'm hopeful that will happen, and I really hope our guys and women are able to race and around the world. I'm hopeful all Olympic. If you've been one or tried to be one, you want them to be able to show their best in that stage.
Wow. Maybe we can leave the last question to one of our viewers. Loads of viewers tuning in to watch. From Owen Anna Walt. The most important part of the stroke and how you coach it.
That's a great question. I think I'm going to give one that's not usually told very often. We call it the middle 80%. When Luke was here, and I have some other really strong assistant coaches now, but when Luke was here, I think he did a fantastic job. And I think it was kind of some of that influence from Sean and other people, but I always felt like he did the middle 80 and I could add the front end and the back end, and then we have more of a complete stroke. And in our last few years, I got my visitor again. 2 minutes, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. 2 minutes, 2 minutes. And so I think if we have guys who know how to use their torso off their leg drive in a way that can accelerate the boat and they're in timing with each other, we've been able to add other pieces to it. So for me, we've really come to the middle 80% that's the part we're looking to do better here right now.
Wow. Michael, you've been absolutely amazing, and your daughter has been amazing in letting you sort of have an hour with us. An hour's company.
Yeah. One second. This is Maya. She wants me to teach her something. So.
Teach me how to sew.
She wants me to teach her how to sew. So that's what we're going to do next.
Wow.
All right.
Michael, I hope you have a fantastic day. It's been such an energized chat. Really, really pumped, really stoked. Learned an awful lot talking to you.
I hope I was able to see you in person at Henley or something soon, and good luck and everyone stay healthy out there. I hope we get past all this and the rowing community can be racing again soon.
Wow.
Thank you. Thanks,
Mike. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.